Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy.
I just realised my mic was on the other side of my desk. Yes, good evening, Pat.
Everyone stop. We're going to go away and we'll come back and we'll start all over again so Chewy can get his mic ready. Everyone stop. Just kidding. We'll keep going because we can.
I have my mic.
Going well?
Yeah, not bad. Very long, busy day. I finished work and I got bombarded with everything that's happened today. And I assume, I haven't looked at the run sheet, but I believe we're covering everything tonight. Just
That doesn't
everything
sound like
that's
you.
happened.
That doesn't sound like you not doing a good hour of prep before you turn up, Chewy. That's most unusual.
I prep throughout the day.
Yeah, obviously one of the big conversations from today is now, I mean, like, I should probably say this during the conversation. Maybe I'll repeat myself so we get a lovely clip out of it as well. But how can you stand in front of the Minister for Police today and not ask the question, that Andrew Bayley thing, technically, was that an assault? Like, how can that question not have been asked by a reporter? Or if it did get asked and I didn't see it on the media, show me where it is, whānau. But how can that question not be asked to the police minister when you have a group of reporters there? I mean, like, and I know, I get it. No, look, I get it. It's not it's not like a blood curdling threat. I get it. It's minor, but how can that not be asked? You know, if it was the other way around, do you think National would be going ballistic right now about the assault by a Labour minister committing assault? Of course they would.
Yeah, there's so much of that story that's amazing. Like, if Luxon had shown true leadership last time Andrew Bayley was in the news, it wouldn't have got to this point. It's into the things that we've spoken about multiple times about how Parliament can be an absolutely toxic place for parliamentary service workers and stuff like that. It's all there. Luxon could have shown decisive leadership, but again, was a shiver looking for a spine to run up.
Yeah.
Just
yeah, look,
empty
we should hold this, or else we're going to burn all our stuff that's not going to get our clickbaits, because that's what we're all about, Joey, headlines and clickbaits when we do the actual story. But there's more. There's a whole heap more about what Luxon should and could have done, especially, let's say, last Tuesday instead of today, but we'll talk about that as we get into it. Hey, I want to say a huge thanks to our patrons. We're going to move quite quickly at the start of the show tonight because I have Gary Economics, the conversation that he had with the most unintellectual US intellectual. Yeah, I think that's right. Dave Rubin. If you guys know Dave Rubin, you don't have to. He's a moron. He's so dumb that when I interviewed him and I explained our health system, he went, oh yeah, I would be okay with that. And I didn't know at the time, but Sam Cedar, that's where I met Sam Cedar. Sam Cedar picked up on it and played one of my clips and said, Pat just described Obamacare. And Dave Rubin just said he'd be okay with that. So that's how stupid this man actually is. And Gary Economics, I'm actually in love. It's not a bromance. I'm in love with this man. And I've got 11 clips. I don't know if we'll get through them all, but I've got 11. We could just do a show tonight where we just watch that show. Brace yourselves. It is freaking.
Told I have to shut the fuck up. No tangents. No.
Put it this way. I saw the thumbnail come up and I saw Gary and I saw Dave Rubin. And before I pushed play to watch the conversation, I thought of the Shakespearian, I think it's from Taming of the Shrew, quote that says, I would challenge you to a battle of wits, but I see you are unarmed, to Dave Rubin. Like, before I watched it, I was thinking this, and it did not It did not disappoint when it comes to that. It's just so, yeah. Anyway, it's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, there's two ways you can see it. You can check it out on YouTube, or you can, if you are a patron, you can check it out on Patreon, because right there I put a clip to the actual Piers Morgan bit. Now, you notice what they do on Piers Morgan is they always try and get people yelling, mouth wide open. That's actually literally their thumbnail. Notice that Gary Economics, they couldn't find an image of him going, ah, because he is a East London chill guy that basically spends the whole interview going, I don't have a fucking opinion. I just make bets. I don't have a fucking opinion. I just tell you what I see. It's just glorious. It is glorious. So if you're not a patron, I want to say huge thanks to the people who have become patrons this week. I think last week I said we're about 2/3 of the way to our total. We said we want to try and get 100 new patrons in the next 2 months. We're basically a month into it. We're at about 75, I think. So we're probably about 3/4 of the way there, Whānau. Want to say thanks to K Moik, or it might be Moke or Morky. Depends on the ethnicity or nationality behind the surname. K, and to Jake Barker, and to Jackie Pamata, and to Mahina, and to Marty Roberts, and to Rhonda Paku, and to Douglas Osborne, and to Lily, who have all become patrons in the last 7 days. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for much being a part of what we do. This weekend there will be a meetup. It is an online meetup, and you get a chance. Oh, Chewy's told me what his little secret is. So if Chewy gets involved, it'll be a special time to have him involved, and hopefully we might see him partly naked. I'll say no more. I'll say no more. Yeah, so that's going to be this weekend. I made a bit of an error though, team, because I said we're going to do another podcast called The Leftist Collective once a month, and I've got one booked in for this week, but of course, February is 28 days. So technically it'll be Sunday night, the 2nd of March. That'll be the next Leftist Collective. I'll give you some more details on that as we go through the week. Also, I'm getting told off by people. I'm getting told off by people for not having the buffers up yet. I got an email yesterday saying, hubby's birthday's coming up. I will commit to get those some hoodies back up there by tomorrow night's show. Ooh, ooh. I said it out loud. So it has to happen. And if you've ordered merch and you haven't heard from us yet, you'll hear from me tomorrow morning, because we've printed them all out. We've got them all. I just can't find my postage packaging from the wedding. We've tidied the house because my siblings were staying here, and I don't know where we've tidied my packages to put the merch into. So that's my job for tomorrow morning, to find that and then put it in and then get it out to you on courier. bhnshop.nz if you want to be a part of that. Remember, anyone who orders during February will also get at least one, maybe even two sometimes, but at least one copy of a sticker that matches the order you're making, only for hoodies and t-shirts. So, Chewy, anything else, love? Anything going on?
Oh, I'm not allowed. No. Like,
well, look, we could just go to 11 o'clock.
On.
That's the other option. We could just do an 11 p.m. show.
We're just going to push through. Look, there's a couple of questions in the chat that I would love to dive into. Conversations about whether we, as a country, need to up our defence spending. That's something I could probably talk about unassisted for 40 minutes. There's the Chinese. The Chinese are here. They're coming.
Tasman.
We need to rebuild the defences around Auckland. Let's do that again when we freaked out about the Russians. There's lots of stuff there that I'd like to talk to. Not tonight, fam. Not allowed. Not allowed. I did a PowerPoint. I had a whiteboard to roll in. I was going to point at things. I was interested in the conversation around the Chinese ships, warships in Tasman Sea, international water, where they're allowed to be, and everyone freaking the fuck out, and Luxon basically going, yeah, well, they're allowed to be there. We don't know why they're there, but they're allowed to be there. And I was a bit like, yeah, well, what do you do as a country if another country's in area near you, but they're allowed to be there? Is there very much you can do rather than just... real quick, I'm not going to do my 40-minute presentation. No. I loved the media being absolutely breathless over the Chinese sailing a flotilla off the coast of Sydney. And I had to go, I think, about 3 or 4 paragraphs down before they mentioned it was like 150 miles off the coast of Sydney in international waters. All of that is fine. Chinese can sail wherever they want in international waters. Where it became interesting is when, right in the middle of New Zealand and Australia, they decided to have a no-notice live fire exercise twice. Didn't tell anyone. Traditionally, courtesy states you give someone 48 hours. That seems to be best practice. They don't have to, and they didn't. And it is kind of like, hey man, that's a bit of a dick move. But that's it. It's not an international incident or anything like that. Where I think it gets really interesting is, my guess here is that flotilla is, this is all guesswork, but this is what I reckon will happen. They will circumnavigate New Zealand and head to the Cook Islands. The timing of the Cook Islands announcing this memorandum of understanding with China against the wishes of New Zealand, is the timing is just too good. Our foreign minister out of the country, just amazing. Like it's a bit of a diplomatic coup. It puts New Zealand and Winston Peters in a really shitty position of us seeming like the stern father figure telling Cook Islands it can't be that independent, but it is literally a concern for New Zealand national security. They're talking about building port facilities for the Chinese fishing fleet, maybe their Coast Guard. You know, it's really interesting what's going on, and I don't know how Winston's going to handle it, but it's going to be really interesting.
Well, guys, we had a really nice show set up for you, but Chewy's used up all the time, so I guess we'll catch you tomorrow night. Is that right? No, it's not right. I also want to talk a bit about child poverty. There was the CEO of Child Poverty Action Group, Sarita Divis, I believe it is, on Q&A in the weekend. And I think maybe, should we start there? Let's start there, eh? We'll start there. Because she was there and they were talking about this government missing its mark, missing its targets. But also there was quite a lot of conversation that came up to do with how school lunches are impacting their missing of the mark quite so badly. So let's have a look at a clip right now. Child poverty under Luxon's government is increasing far higher than anyone thought it would.
What was happening after the legislation came in, we were seeing that decrease in child.
So it's the legislation under another political party, not the guys, but another one. After that legislation came in, child poverty was going down.
Poverty, and now for the last 2 years we're seeing it increase. So the stats before was the first time it was increasing, and these stats as well are showing that the increase is there. We are increasing and we need to do something urgently about it.
Let's focus on material hardship, because that is one of the key measures here. You have an index of 17 sort of things which they measure, and if you have or if a household lacks 6 or more of those, they are considered to be a family in material hardship. So what are we talking about? We're talking about what, going without fruit and vegetables or heating, those sorts of things? Yeah,
that's exactly. And
this also, not to interrupt too much, because it's not about this ties in so beautifully for the Gary economics, where one of the stats he says in the UK is half of the people in the UK don't have enough money to keep the heat on and feed their children. Right, that's what the research shows. So think about that for the UK and see how this relates to what we're looking at in New Zealand right now.
That's children's futures then, isn't it? So material hardship is an important indicator. There's the 3 primary measures. There's the first is around incomes before housing, after housing costs, and the material hardships. Those are very important measures for us to see where we're tracking.
Sure. So for young kids in those homes of material hardship, what impact does that have on them at such a formative age?
So it flows through to education. So for example, the Food in Schools program is so important. And that is one of the levers that the government could use to alleviate.
Because one of the material hardships is enough food to eat. So if the school's providing some food to eat, that's one of the things that helps take kids, one of the markers at least, to help take them out of poverty.
Material hardship. So material hardship, some of those ones are around, do you have fresh fruit and vegetables? Do you have food in the household? And we must remember as well that these statistics are from about a year ago. So there's other statistics, and what we're hearing on the ground is that child poverty is even worse. So the latest New Zealand Health Survey showed that 1 in 4 children are in households where they're going without food often or sometimes.
So does that make the Food in Schools program even more important?
Yes, and it was good to see Louise Upston in her press release around the stats saying that...
She referenced it, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. She said that this is one of the ways that we're wanting to address child poverty.
So that's clip number 1. Now, true, clip number 2 speaks specifically to school lunches, but sir, I know someone that, what was it, JC and the Pigeon Cat? Shit, so feeding people helps? Wow. Very true. Chewy.
Exactly. So why are we bitching about a school getting butter chicken 12 days in a row? Surely that will unlock the full potential of the next generation.
The information and the news stories that are coming out over the weekend about the waste that's happening with those school lunches now, and we're seeing photos of rubbish bins full from the bottom to the top with school lunches, and it's so interesting to think about, you know, what the kids want to eat. I'm not just saying give them lollies and Coca-Cola, but if you give them shit, they don't eat it. One part of the political spectrum goes, well, they mustn't be hungry. The other part go, we actually have to give them food that's going to sustain them and is good for them and they want. Right, Mr. Luxon, if you want to run this place like a business, then what you do for your customers is you provide for them a good or service that they'd like to purchase. You don't just deliver them any old slop and shit. So if we're going to go down this path of running the country like a business, Mr. Luxon, then what you need to be doing is providing a product to these children who want this product. The product has to be to the standard, and it has to be the style, the taste, the whatever kind of food that they actually want to eat. Or else you're kind of speaking out both sides of your mouth about my business experience and running a country. Yeah. Is that fair, Chewy?
So, yeah, it is. Do you remember one of the things before this rolled out that Seymour was talking about was the waste? And I think we worked it out, and a couple of other outlets worked it out, that the wastage in this program was probably sub 5%.
Yeah,
Tiny amount of wastage, and anybody that deals with making food en masse would acknowledge that. I saw mention, and admittedly this was tracking one school, since school has gone back, wastage is at 70%.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just saw in this story. Try and find it.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's being looked at. One of the things that Seymour also said, he was on record as saying this would be one of the best meals that you've ever had. Clearly is not meeting up to that. He's mentioned that he's received feedback from teachers and parents that these are amazing. They're enjoyed and wanted. He has nothing to back that up. That has been requested for people to see the correspondence that he's talking about. He doesn't have it. He's made it up. Because I'm not in the house, I can say this. He's a fucking liar. He has been lying about this since the get-go, and his only way is, maybe if I'll tell more lies, I'll dig myself out of this. It's not working. Louise Upston, it's not Louise Upston. Who is it? Your favourite, your crush, your national crush.
Erica.
What's her name? Erica Stanford. She is right to not want any piece of this, because it is, much like the food that's being delivered, nuclear waste.
It's the same sort of vibe as Luxon running away from the treaty principles bill, isn't it? There's some parallels there for running away from something you're actually responsible for, Mr. Luxon and Mrs. Stanford. We'll go with.
We gave a shit ton of public money to an international company with a record of putting horse meat in food to prisoners, to doing outright bribery, and just being really shit at what they do. but they could do it for $3 a meal. In the process of that, they've cost local jobs. We're not using local produce. And then what we're getting is arriving late, cold, burnt, soggy, thrown in the bin. This is not an effective use of public money.
The chief executive of Child Poverty Action Group, Sarita Divis, then spoke to Guy and specifically, Chewy, about school lunches. Let's hear this.
That's what we want to see in the next budget, something done about those cuts and to reverse those cuts. So with, in conjunction with Health Coalition, Aotearoa, the New Zealand Education Union, we campaigned around, and the whole community sector and the community campaigned around to make sure that that Food in Schools program continued. It's great to see the national government saying that there's that commitment to it, and we need to make sure it works. So with 1 in 4 children not having enough food, that could be they don't have the breakfast and dinner.
Yep.
So we need to make sure that lunch that they receive is nutritious, healthy and delicious, so that they do get those educational benefits and those health benefits.
And is it delivering, in your view, under the new scheme?
Under the new scheme, it is definitely not delivering. It is, and I challenge anyone to be able to make lunch for $3. And especially if that is going to be one of the main meals for that child.
She must be confused. I mean, like Mountain Tui's written about it here. Look, it's easy to do lunch for $3. Look, just look, there it is. Easy. That's how you do lunch for $3. And no, remember this. Hang on. Stop. Right? This is the thing about private enterprise. Remember, the difference between private enterprise and public owned is there's got to be a profit margin on top. So that's not a $3 meal. That's like a $1.50 meal. Because it's a company. There's a profit margin on top. Has anyone ever asked Seymour that question? What profit margin do they have? Because we keep getting told about these $3 meals. How much of that is profit? Half? A third? Are those $2 meals? What actually are they?
So mainstream media that's listening, that's a good question. You should write that down in your book.
And your book headed up, the book that's headed up, Ideas from BHN we can use tomorrow.
Look, Pat, you and I have both experienced meals made at a very low cost.
Yeah.
Do you go back to that place like I do?
No.
You don't.
Well, it depends. Sorry.
I do.
If it's bad. Okay, let's be specific. Talking about the bowling club.
We're talking about the bowling club.
Of course, because they do it
set
right.
Up, it's a profit-making business that serves 800 plus meals every weekday night.
$4.
And they do it for a couple of bucks or free if you can't afford it. You can make tasty meals very, very cheaply en masse if you want to.
I mean, I don't know their business, so I'll just ask this. I think you know it better than me, actually. One of their business practices is they get donations and they get food given to them from businesses in the region, don't they? Which means if you're going to do school lunches in a similar sort of way, there needs to be a community feel about it. But then if you're talking about feeding the kids in your community, maybe that's not such a hard stretch. And if you hadn't tried to centralise food, remember how you didn't want anything else centralised, national? Now, remember how you didn't want 3 waters centralised, and you didn't want the health system centralised, you didn't want the polytech centralised, but you thought, let's centralise the food. Yeah. And all of those, we've heard numbers like 2,500 jobs gone, all those little groups around. I read a story, I was going to try and get them on, from Gisborne about a company that's gone bankrupt because they've lost this contract. All those ones that were in the area that had reason, because they knew the kids, they knew the family, they knew the school, to actually provide things. You've gone, centralising is the best way to go.
Yeah. They centralise exactly what doesn't need to be centralised. Like this is a perfect example of no, it should be local. We are a country that produces an enormous amount of food. We have so many resources here that the fact that we haven't had a school food program nationwide, every school set up, part and parcel of the mission statement of every primary school, every secondary school in the country, the fact that we have never had that, and the fact that we don't have that now in a country that produces as much food as we have is a national shame. Nobody's done it. Nobody's done it.
I didn't in the end up reaching out to these guys. I should have probably. Maybe I saw liquidators appointed to Gisborne-based school lunch provider Puku Ora. Award-winning Gisborne business that supplied thousands of lunches daily to local schools is closing the doors after the government's new school lunches program more than halved its contract. The founders
Party
of
of
Puku Ora
business.
say changes with the national school lunch funding model meant they lost a core part of their business, making it difficult to operate. Yeah, there you go. There's one example, and we've heard the number 2,000 to 2,500 jobs gone to give this to a centralised, because apparently centralising this is the right thing to do. Centralising everything else into Labour, evil, bad, socialist. This, good, perfect, spot on. Right.
Can I just say real quickly, Puku Ora is a great name.
Yeah. Very good name. Okay, let's get back to the end of this because we've got about 60 seconds to go. And we're still talking specifically to the CE of Child Poverty Action Group about school lunches in particular.
And especially if that is going to be one of the main meals for that child. So that flows through to health costs, life expectancy, education. We know education is a key way to get through to break the cycle of poverty. And so if and one of the other studies that came out showed that children in food insecure households are 4 years behind in their schooling. And so
think about this government, how they're putting in so much noise around kids at 15 not getting up to national standard. Well, food insecurity can drop a kid back by 4 years. That means they're performing like 11-year-olds. Maybe that's part of the answer, Mr. Luxon, Mrs. Stanford, about how to actually get your numbers up. You make sure the kids are fed well. I mean, we can start to debate things around national standards, and John Key now as well. But if the research says that you can be up to 4 years behind with food insecurity, let's make the kids secure with their food. Add that in, see if it makes a difference. It doesn't, or it's not enough. Okay, let's do something else. But there's a pretty easy step in the right direction immediately, Chewy.
Yep, absolutely. And look, this is something with very clear benefits. And we were talking before about the increase in military spending and that sort of thing. That may very well be something we need to look at. But it's one of those things that the government was going, yeah, like we're really relaxed about doubling our military spending out of nowhere, unplanned. But we can't find money for this, for feeding kids. We found money instantly. Again, we have to say it, don't we? We found money instantly. Drop of a hat. Non-negotiable. Landlords, bam. We found it for tax cuts. Really minimal tax cuts for most people, but we found it instantly. Non-negotiable. Somehow feeding kids, bit hard, bit awkward.
That would be interesting. I wonder what the cost of feeding kids is per annum. It's like 100 and something million, eh? And they just gave Morris, whatever they're called, the tobacco guys, 200 million. So they're literally taking food out of the kids' mouths and putting it into big tobacco. We'll check that number, but I'm pretty sure it was 300 million, and they took 103 million out to 200 million. But hang on, they gave 200 million to the tobacco companies. That could have just paid for all the school. No one else sees, just me. All right, fair enough.
Big impact.
Yeah,
doesn't
it has a big. But I just wanted to say as well that when you do proactive policies like this, it can make a difference. So the Growing Up in New Zealand study showed that children in food insecure households, if they were getting government assistance, then actually 4 years later they were able to get out of food insecurity, whereas those that didn't have that government assistance, they weren't able to. So that's why incomes are so important as well.
There you go. There's a second clip, Joey. And if there's anything else you want to add, go for it. I mean, I think we've spelt out the ridiculous nature of this government. As soon as we say Philip Morris gets 200 mil or gets credited 200 mil, or the government chooses to take 200 mil less, however you want to word it, and then you find out that school lunches is about 200 mil, you know.
See, this might be shocking for some of our listeners, but this is where you start to spot. I start dropping some clues that I might be a little bit socialist. Like I know I hide it well, but I just think feeding kids should be on the mission statement. It's part of the school. Like there's such a weird attitude to feeding kids at school from some segments of the New Zealand voting public, or at least the ones that vomit out their thoughts on Facebook and that sort of thing, that suddenly feeding kids is just a terrible failure to do, and that it's all down to the parents. You would be blown away about how many countries feed their kids at school as a matter of course and have always done so. Like, it's just a good idea. Some do it better than others. We should do it better than everybody.
Let me just remind people, I was just looking for the figure for the school lunches because we like to be right. Didn't find it immediately, but I did find this paragraph true. Now, I'll say this out loud, and everyone make sure you're not having a cup of tea whilst I say this. I don't want to see or hear about any spit takes, but I'll read you the paragraph. The revised program brought the cost of each meal down to $3 and would, on paper, save taxpayers over $130 million a year without sacrifices to quality and nutrition.
And that, friends and family, was a lie. Like we always said it was going to be.
Yep. And remember, on the day that they said they showed it to us, there was fruit, there was yogurt, there was fresh bread, there was slice, there was muesli bars. And what did they deliver? That shit. Enough said. Let's have a look at some of the super chats that have come in. Kiwi Bird, thank you. Aotearoa is a wealthy country. If we can afford to give tax cuts to corporations and landlords, we can feed the kids proper food. I agree. I actually wonder, Chewy, if they delivered that to a prison, like if that was the food delivered to a prison, what would be the result? Like, would the prisoners be able to go, you're impinging on my human rights? Like, I wonder if they would be allowed to deliver that to prisoners, seeing this company also feeds prisoners. Or is this to be expected for a prisoner because, stuff them, let's just treat them as badly as possible? I genuinely wonder that, though. I wonder if anyone's got the answer for us on that.
I always bitch about that annual story about prisoners, what their Christmas meal is and how it's always too much for some people. Like that's the sort of picture that people want to see prisoners eating.
Yeah.
It's people locked up for crimes, for doing crimes. If they were eating that, people would be stoked. If you turned around and said, that's what we're feeding school kids, where is the outrage? The outrage is directed at their parents, these kids' parents. Well, if they don't want to eat that, they should be making their lunches like my mum used to. It's not the same. Kids shouldn't be punished for the sins of their parents. That's a red line.
I've got some evidence for you, Mr. Adjudicator. From 2020, New Zealand prison menu upgraded after 11 years. The old style of working was we fill them up on carbs. Spring Hill Corrections faculties Jimmy Byrne designed the new national prison menu. So here you go. Here's prison food. Just so we know what we're talking about. White bread has been replaced with healthier
multigrain. We need to get these kids into the prison system.
Well, maybe that's what the actual ultimate plan is. Here we go. I'll see if I can read this with my stupid old eyes. I guess this is in the morning, tea and sugar, mixed grain sandwiches, roast beef and relish with salad, egg and mayo salad, mixed grain sandwiches, tomato mayo salad. Oh, this makes sense next day, so it goes this way. Dinner, mixed grain, chicken and vegetable couscous salad. That sounds pretty woke. Lentils, bolognese, fish fillet, roast chicken, roast beef, fresh fruit. So what it would appear from this menu, right? It would appear
better than kids.
That the prisoners are eating far better than the kids. Now, I know you can't really read into this. It costs on average $6.03 to feed a prisoner because obviously there's going to be 3 meals plus things on the side there as well. But from looking at that menu, it would be pretty easy to draw the conclusion that prisoners are eating better than our school kids. Now, we're not saying this because we think prisoners shouldn't get decent food. We're saying this because we think maybe the kids could at least get the same. Maybe that's something we could do. Maybe the prisoners have got like a better union than the school kids. Maybe the school kids need to unionize. There you go, Chewy. We getting there now? How do we get there?
Well, I don't know. The other way that prisoners get better attention paid to their conditions is they start burning wings of the prison down. Kids?
Or they sit on the roof.
I don't know. Yeah, climb on the roof.
Don't do that. Don't do that, kids. Chewy, Uncle Chewy's joking.
Take your principal prisoner.
Uncle Chewy
hostage taking.
Using metaphor now that your young brains may not understand, but this is not, he's not actually saying that. He's saying in a metaphorical world.
I am trying to weaponize the large part of our audience that is between the ages of 5 and 18.
It's in the bell. It's got an interesting point. I think David Seymour was expecting the $3 would be subsidised by food donations to help bring that cost down, but no business is donating to Compass. Yeah,
Who's donating stuff to Compass?
It's an interesting thought, but I don't. Yeah, who's going to do that? Anyhow, well, there you go. Okay, mainstream media who've already got one question of us. The second question is now this: tomorrow for lunch, what's a prisoner in Palermo going to be eating versus a kid in Brooklyn, Wellington? I want to see the two menus, please. Come on, guys. You guys with access, sort your shit out. That's an easy question. Anyhow.
The flip side to that whole food donation thing is I bet those community groups were getting food donations from local suppliers.
Totally.
And again, I said this the other week. Foodstuffs, you're looking for some good PR, aren't you?
Yep.
Aren't you? You know,
hey,
supermarket duopoly. Here's how you get us off your back. Start donating food.
Here's a question of the day. What actually happened in the Andrew Bayley incident? This is the question. Let's have a look at the story from One News tonight.
National's Andrew Bayley has resigned as a minister after putting a hand on one of
Resigned as a minister. 180k to sit on the backbench and do nothing, remember?
his staff. It's the second incident in the last few months for the now former Commerce and Consumer Affairs Minister after he admitted in October to calling a winery worker a loser. Here's the time frame of what unfolded and when for the latest incident. The altercation.
I'm going to be a bit judgy here. He's such a smarmy little cunt, isn't he? I mean, honestly, just reeks of looking down his nose at people. Honestly, that's how it vibes out to me.
Occurred in Bayley's office last Tuesday, February the 18th. The following evening, the Prime Minister's office staff were informed, along with ministerial services. Sometime on Thursday and Friday, discussions took place with the affected parties and Christopher Luxon was told about it. Then on Friday...
Hang on. So there was an incident that the ministerial staff didn't share with the Prime Minister. What, it's like they couldn't disturb him because it would ruin his night's sleep? Why would you...
Evening, Bayley resigned. Political editor Mikey Sherman is standing by live with more on the fallout. Her report first.
Under the glare of the hot afternoon sun, Andrew Bayley and his small support crew made the long, dreaded walk towards media to announce the end.
Hey, Mikey, you're being a little bit dramatic here. This is not a death row inmate coming up, just a little bit dramatic. I mean, it looks like you've maybe flared the camera as well, a little bit more light in. I'm just saying, I mean, love your work, a little bit dramatic.
End of his ministerial career.
There are times when you have to hold yourself to account.
And I decided to do that several days after I technically assaulted a staff member.
But it wasn't last year.
Today is one of those days. I have made the personal choice to resign as a minister. As
opposed to the corporate choice? What the personal choice? Are you wanting to make it clear that this is all on you, as opposed to what other choice would it be?
And I've offered my resignation to the Prime Minister, which he has accepted.
Bayley admitted to, quote, overbearing behaviour last week during an animated discussion with a staffer in his office.
I took the discussion...
Otherwise known as workplace bullying? Overbearing? But is bullying going to be an accurate term? Do you know what I just thought, Chewy? Just right now, and I'm sorry, Whānau, for being such a moron. Last Thursday, the House was still in. Questions in the House. this happened last Tuesday. Me wonders right now as we're sitting here if this potentially is the delay for the release. Imagine if this had come out last Tuesday, Wednesday, when the House was sitting. Now you're thinking.
Too far, and I placed a hand on their upper arm, which was inappropriate.
Asked what animated meant,
Lively.
and
Animated means two-dimensional, so I'm not quite sure if you're using that correctly. Lively. You mean as the position of power, as the man, as the individual in the room with power, being loud and aggressive towards one another. That's lively.
Can I also point out? Oh, maybe it's me reading too much into this. I placed my hand on their upper arm. We're leaving gender out of this, are we?
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I actually rewound it.
Important?
I rewound it to see what it was, and it was there. It was non-gender specific. There have been people in the chat intimating what gender or what sex the person was, but I don't know if that's been confirmed just yet.
how he grabbed the staffer.
I held their arm.
Bayley explaining he was simply, quote, impatient to drive change in his portfolios.
So get this. So because he was impatient to make massive changes to his portfolio across the whole country, he thought he'd grab someone in his office. Come on. Come on, media. Do your fucking jobs.
Have you been aggressive like that in other situations?
I've never had anything like this happen before.
I think it's.
Oh, now what does that mean though? I've never had anything like this happen before. What, being called out for it? Having to quit for something? Or the actual action? Well, I'm genuinely saying I don't know the answer to that, but it's worded in a very interestingly way there, Chewy, if you ask me.
I'm also... Remember one of the criticisms thrown at female politicians or female leaders is that they're too emotionally unstable to be in that role? This guy couldn't handle the fact that the shit wasn't moving fast enough in his portfolio, with no examples given of what. Look, it was a life or death thing, and this person was dragging their heels. No, we don't get that. I'm frustrated because things don't move to my timetable, so I shook someone.
Yeah,
I grabbed them. I physically assaulted them.
Yeah.
And then I've had a big think about it for a week, and my boss hasn't done anything. So I'm a go. I'm go now.
And just quietly, if there is any politician right now that I look at and think they're fast moving, Andrew Bayley would not be at the top of my list. He doesn't reek of speedy and haste, kind of more the opposite.
I've never had anything like this happen before.
I think it's good that he recognised that he didn't meet his own standards. I think.
Now remember, right? I think to the left of Mr. Luxon is the police minister. I'll say this again, media. Why did no one ask the question? Minister for Police, Mark Mitchell. Does this rise to the level of technically an assault? No one asked the Minister for Police, who was just off screen there, just kind of where I am. Can I get my shoulder lined up with him? No, I can't. Didn't ask the question though.
It's it's good that he then reflected on that.
But that reflection wasn't entirely self-initiated. In fact, the day after the staffer incident, it was business as usual for Bayley, who did an interview with One News.
Far out. That's quite the timeline. I wasn't aware that he was doing public interviews whilst all of this was going on.
Once a complaint was laid that evening, the reflection truly set in and follows a separate complaint last year after Bayley humiliated a wine worker during a ministerial visit.
Did he call the worker a loser?
Yes.
We've now got ministers sacking themselves when the Prime Minister should have showed some leadership and done that months ago.
It's a hypothetical because I didn't have to go there because he most importantly had recognised that his behaviour hadn't met his own high standards.
Bayley will...
It is strange how he said twice his own high standard, eh? Mr. Luxon, can we be drawn on, is it also outside your standard? Because why do you keep saying his standard? Like, what does it even mean? The cabinet standard, the cabinet handbook standard, my standard I expect. No, you chose to go with his own standard. So what if someone's own standard was well beyond where yours was? Would you let them resign or not based on their standards, even if you think so? It's just quite a strange way. Maybe he's trying to distance himself. It's a strange wording, Chewy.
You can try this yourself in your own workplace tomorrow. Just grab a colleague, co-worker, maybe someone that works under you, give them a good shake because they didn't do something fast enough, and see how long you get to think about what you've done.
Maybe like the rest of your career.
The Andrew Bayley challenge. If you get to a week later without being sacked, you win.
Yeah, there we go.
Remain as the MP for Port Waikato.
As far as I know.
Why?
It's been okay.
It's probably a good idea if he's not really coping with the job.
With his political career in free fall, the question is why he resigned on Friday and it was only made public today.
To be honest, I would have had difficulty doing this interview over the last couple of days.
Oh, he's a victim, Chewy. Come on, all you right-wingers who love to get online and tell everyone where they're soft and they're cucks and stuff. Well, he would have been... He's the one that's facing the worst thing in this, Chewy, not the person who he technically assaulted, put his hands on, but he's the one. It's him, Chewy. Oh, tear. Little tear.
I've had to talk to my family, and that's why I've made the decision, and that's why we're announcing it today.
The now former minister calling it a day.
Calling it a day.
There you go, Chewy. We won't do the after about.
Right, so let's take stock of Andrew Bayley, right? Now we've got one of our right-wing croutons in the chat at the moment, drawing all sorts of parallels between.
Welcome.
Kiri Allen.
Yep.
I urged him to check the timeline of what happened with Kiri Allen, how long it took for her to come forward, how long it took for decisive action to be taken, and just the very different circumstances in general. There's no direct comparison there.
Can I just say, can I offer one thing? Sorry, can I offer one thing? Because I'm sick and tired of this whataboutism. Kiri Allen can be a bad situation. Kiri Allen can be wrong. Kiri Allen can need to go, and so can this guy. Like, you go back and check the tape with me and Chewy talking about things like Kiri Allen. Yeah, we pointed out how bad it was. So we're not going to get caught up in the whataboutism where people go, but what about? It's like, yeah, that was bad. This is bad. You know what we're talking about today? This. Because you know when Kiri Allen happened? We talked about that then. Now we're talking about this. So stop trying to deflect from this, because we did talk about that at the time, and now we're talking about this.
The other aspect is we can talk about another Labor, and again, this wasn't good for Labor. We were very, very vocal about it at the time. Michael Woodhouse's shares.
Yep.
You know, that was something that like it was embarrassing. It dragged on way too long. Guess what? Andrew Bayley again.
Yeah.
Sitting on more shares than Woodhouse had, and for longer, still there. And then his winery debacle that dragged on and on and on, no decisive action from the leader, still there. So this guy just keeps coming back for more punishment, like a fucking albatross around Luxon's neck. No decisive action taken. No sign of leadership, because we are talking about a jellyfish in a suit, can't make a fucking decision. He's very vocal on record whenever someone on the other side, when Labor was in government, that they needed to go, that if Hipkins was a decisive leader, they'd cut him loose now. The shoe's on the other foot, everything's reversed. You don't get that from Luxon because he's a weak operator. He's a weak leader. He's not very good at this. He's not a great politician. He's never been a good leader. He doesn't have those instincts. There's no evidence of it in his previous career. You can talk to people that worked in Air New Zealand during his tenure. They've got some pretty strong opinions of the leadership of Luxon. And we put that at the wheel of an entire country. And why are we surprised when we get this?
Yep, 100%. Some messages that have been coming in. If I can click on the freaking screen. This is previous about our conversation. The kids yearn for the union, says Mr. Arvids. Gold, thank you for your super chats. Says the PM has not said if he'd have fired Bayley, if he'd not resigned. Not sure if he's been asked this, though. Mainstream media are failing us if not. Well, he was asked, because that's why he said, well, it's a hypothetical because I didn't need to go there because, so yeah, pathetic. It's a hypothetical. I didn't need to go there. No, the answer is if he hadn't have resigned, I would have fired him. That's actually the only acceptable answer. Any other answer is, as Chewy's been saying, jellyfish. John, thank you for the super chat. Just a straight $5.
And just another point here.
Yep.
As you said, he's resigning his portfolios. He's still staying in the house. He's still getting his paycheck. There's not going to be a by-election. And as we mentioned last week, even if there was a by-election, could we run it?
Yeah, true.
Are there enough people to run a by-election at the moment?
And finally, Mr. Arvids has a suggestion for you're joking around talking about putting hands on someone at their workplaces, the hypothetical that you're definitely not telling people to do, but he thinks it should be the Get Animated Challenge, which is quite clever. All that. All right, anything else, Chewy, or are we going to move into the bit of the show that I'm really
rolling on?
To?
Good pace.
All right, here we go. This guy's name is Gary. He runs a YouTube channel called Gary's Economist. We've featured him a couple of times here before. We've sent him a couple of emails to see if he'd come and talk to us. He was on Piers Morgan, I think Friday or Saturday New Zealand time. And he is a guy, well, I'm going to play this first bit because this first bit actually gives his background and he says what he's all about. But basically, he's from East London. He's a poor boy that became the best trader in the world. Let's let him use his own words to tell you about him.
Well, I come from a poor background. I come from a poor background in East London. My friends and my family still live in that background. So, these stories of mum skipping meals so the kids can eat, people not being able to put the heating on in the winter, that's common. That's really, really, and I think it's important that we say that in spaces like these, because now I exist in these media spaces, and I've been to these fancy universities, I've worked in the banks. A lot of wealthy people don't see that's happening. In this country, I'm talking to you right now, half the country struggles to simultaneously feed the kids and turn the heating on. That's the truth. And I know it's getting that way in America as well. So of course it resonates with me, Of course it resonates with me. The poverty is out of control.
There we go. So there's just his background. As you can see here, if we can, we're going to get to a few of them. So that's his background. We're going to go to a clip where he just expands a bit more on his background. I'm going to play a bit, I think, at the end of this first clip by the guy sitting next to him, Dave Rubin. I don't want to play a lot of Dave Rubin because he's a moron, but I kind of want to play one just to show you what a moron he is. It's just all trickle-down economics. It's all if we lower tax rates, everyone will be better off. It's just all the current bullshit. And when Rubin's speaking, just watch Gary's face. I took a freeze frame of what his face is, and if we ever get a chance to interview Gary, I'm going to say to him, what were you thinking when you made this face? Because he's a bit like Chloe. It looks like you can just see it all in his face. So he's going to expand a bit more on his background.
I was a trader for a long time, and I worked with a much older trader. In the book, he's called JB. He had a good quote about these kinds of opinions. He said, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one. Now listen, I don't get paid to have opinions, okay? I was one of the best paid and most successful traders in the world, one of the biggest banks in the world. I put bets. I place bets. And I've been betting for 14 years that the working class in my country and the working class in your country will collapse into desperate, worsening poverty year after year. I'm a multimillionaire from doing that, from betting on that. Traders message me every day. They say what's going to happen. I say it's going to get worse.
So the thing that's there's some moments in here where he uses expletives and stuff, and he says fuck, and I'm just like, oh, it's just like he's been given the keys to the kingdom and he's gone, here, why don't the rest of you come and have a look what's happening inside? Because he's been there and he's done that and he's rejected it, and now he's telling everybody about what it looks like inside the kingdom and why it's like that, and he's fucking brilliant. So this clip's probably the longest one we're going to play. It's about 4 minutes, but yeah, let's get through this first one and then we start chatting, Chewy.
I've been betting on it since the beginning of COVID. I've made millions on it. all the best traders know. Let me explain to you how economics works, all right? You guys work in media, all right?
Please.
I work for Citibank. You call up Citibank and you say, I want an opinion on what's going to happen to the economy. They pay me £2 million a year. Do they give me the phone? No, they don't. Kids like me don't get the phone. We get the money, okay? I shouldn't be here. Doesn't make no sense for me to have a YouTube channel. Doesn't make no sense for me to be here. I got paid millions of dollars a year to bet on the collapse of your working class, okay? I walked away to come here on this show for free because I want to tell the public, the American people, this gets worse. This gets worse. I'm not just saying it, I'm betting on it.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
So explain what you mean. So
yeah, by the way, if you haven't figured that out, you may not feel very happy at the end of this, but you will feel informed and you will feel excited that someone like this is in these spaces saying these things.
When you say you've been betting on it,
okay, right. So I started
explain to people who don't know the system.
I started working in 2008, which, as you all know, is the Lehman crisis.
Right.
The collapse of the economy. And my job
Too big to fail.
My job was betting on interest rates. As you'll know, in 2008, all the interest rates went to zero. Then my job is when will the interest rates come back up, which is kind of a proxy for when will the economy recover. I'll give you a history lesson on it, right? In 2008, everybody said 2009. In 2009, they said 2010. In 2010, they said 2011. Every single year, up until 2020, they said rates will recover next year, until 2020, when they finally said rates will stay zero forever. We're bad at this. We're bad at this, okay? I'm fucking good at this, all right? Why did interest rates not...
Did you hear that while you were laughing, Drew? This is one of the things I love most about him, when he talks about himself.
We're bad at this, okay? I'm fucking good at this, all right? Why did interest rates not recover after 2008? Because people weren't spending money. Zero interest rates are supposed to get people spending. Why did zero interest rates not get people spending? I had the radical idea of going out and asking people, what do you think people say when I ask them, why aren't you spending more money? What do you think people say?
He's also a fucking genius because what he does is he keeps asking these guys questions and they don't have the answers. He asks the American at one stage what his national debt is and he doesn't know. So you get the idea that these talking heads do this and they have a narrative and they follow it. But this guy, it's like, I guess it's like reviewing a movie. Someone can tell you all the things that they've seen in a movie, but they didn't make the movie. You know, it's the people who made the movie really know what's going on. He really knows what's going on. These talking heads, they have their headline, they have their narrative, but they go no deeper. And so 2 or 3 times he asks Morgan, and this is the whole conversation that you can get on Patreon right now, or you can just get off YouTube. And they don't have the answer to simple questions. And it's terrifying that these are then the people who are some of the biggest voices in the world talking about things like the economy, and they don't know.
They're not spending more money because they probably don't have more money.
Yeah. And when I looked at their financial situations, what I saw, this is in early 2010s, I was in my mid-20s, I saw a generation of people, my parents' generation, who owned property, and another generation of people, their kids, my generation, who will never own property. The middle class are losing their homes, the middle class are losing their wealth. Where is that wealth going? Where is that wealth
And your
going?
argument is it's going just to the super rich.
Where else?
So they're getting... So Dave, I mean...
Well, I think it's important to make a distinction.
So that's the end of his first point. I'm going to give you 60 seconds of Dave Rubin, and I apologise in advance for making this word salad bullshit in your ears having to come. But I need you to show the man who made the movie, i.e. the man who knows how it all works, and the talking head and all that repetitive pablum narrative that you hear from these people who don't know what's going on. Dave Rubin is a moron. He does not know what's going on.
First off, what's happening in your country and our country are not exactly the same, but largely over the last decade, until the last month where we now have Donald Trump, both of our countries have been going in the direction of more big government, more regulation, more of the middle management nonsense that Elon Musk is uncovering every day. So I would be for removing as much of that as possible, removing as much of the waste. I mean, we are now seeing with USAID and everything else that Elon is uncovering with Doge that the...
You know, I heard James Carville talking over the weekend about USAID, and he went something like, he basically says, look, if I grant you all of that money from USAID was corrupt, let's just say it was all of it, which obviously is ridiculous, but all of it was 46 billion. The economy is $6 trillion. It's something like 0.14%. So it's like, that's when you get to this idea of what big numbers can sound like. USAID, some of it was overspent, some of it was misspent, whatever. If it was all like 0.01% of the economy or some ridiculously low number. And these guys' narrative is now we say that word as much as we can, make a big number, people get scared, they think we know what we're talking about, but they don't.
Amount of waste and absolute fraud, and I would say criminal negligence in the system is a huge root of it. So I agree.
Shocking, yeah.
So again, I agree with some of the symptoms.
It's not shocking, Piers. It's bullshit.
You're talking about for sure. The question is the diagnosis. So how do you then say to the person that can't afford the house, how do you afford a house? Well, one way you might want to do it is I would, if I was in charge of your country or mine, I would lower taxes for everybody. I would do a flat tax for everybody. Make sure, so whether you're a billionaire or whether you make $100,000 or 75 grand, whatever it might be, you're going to pay whatever the number is. We can all agree on the number. Let's say it's 10%.
Just look at Gary.
The billionaire.
Look at how Gary is listening to him. It's just like, you can, I mean.
This is so busted. So
is still paying way more in taxes. But this type of class warfare that we've been caught up in, where the common phrase always is, well, they have to pay their fair share. Well, who decides what the fair share is? And guess what? Someone will always want more of your money.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the end of clip number 1. Chewy, I've got more. I've got lots of it as well. But how about you jump in and share your thoughts about what's being said as we go along? Thoughts, sir?
Yeah. So you were talking about USAID. What was their budget again?
I think it was 46 billion, I think.
46 billion. Okay. I don't know why that sprung to mind. The US is currently building a new fleet of aircraft carriers at $13 billion a piece. The whole program. Yeah, whole program, $40 billion. You buy, I think, 10 or 12 aircraft carriers. Again, it's about priorities. Like, America has more people sleeping under bridges on the side of railway lines and motorways than I have ever seen in my life. There is next to zero safety net. And it really comes to the fore when you're talking about the American experience, is that most people are maybe a month or two away from living in the street. They're not a month or two away from having dinner with Elon Musk. So stop being a bootlicker for a billionaire who's fiddling while their whole republic burns. And everywhere in the Western world, we've got a bootlicker here. We've got that Mowbray prick that seems to think that feeding kids is a waste of time and is happy to donate an enormous amount of money to ACT to make sure that children are hungry at schools. He's our little Elon Musk bootlicker. He'd probably love that analogy. Fuck.
The only thing I would
so angry.
I'll just disagree with one thing. You said a billionaire is fiddling basically while Rome burns. The only thing I would say is you left the S off. Billionaires. Look at his cabinet.
Oh, they're all in on it. And the fact that there are working poor, unemployed, undereducated people cheering these billionaires, supposed billionaires, pretend millionaires, business people. They're cheering for them because they think that they're going to help you. Where the fuck is that coming from? Like, it makes no sense. And what Rubin's saying here is the thing that's going to fix all of this is a flat tax. I think that comes out of Sim City. That was something that you could do in Sim City to boost production. It's not something that has ever worked in modern economics. The glory days of USA building their freeway system, going to the fucking moon, completely reaching just levels of luxury in the middle class that have never, ever been equaled on this planet, was in the 50s and 60s when they were taxing the wealthiest people at more than 80%. They were able to do all of that, and somehow there's some sort of collective gas leak in that country that goes, no, that wasn't what made things great. That wasn't it to do with anything.
Well, what you're talking about now is a part of the conversation we're about to get to. So we'll keep trucking. I wanted to play this a little bit here. I think it's everything else is like somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes now, all these clips. So it's not going to be as long as that one again. But it's a part where he basically talks about, and I love this about Gary as well. It's like he doesn't have opinions, he makes predictions. And you watch Piers Morgan try to divert the conversation.
Listen, I don't like opinions. I'm not really interested in opinions. I make predictions. What you've said you want is what you're going to get, right? Because this is the policy of the new government. Do you think living standards for your average working class American are going to improve?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, that's good. Put this on YouTube. Put this on YouTube because I'll call back.
Why are you convinced they won't?
Listen, I've got a video.
Because Trump in his first 3 years before the pandemic, that was happening.
Yes, absolutely it was.
So why can't he do it again?
I've got a video, June 2020, beginning of COVID, right at the beginning of COVID, okay? What's the total US government deficit now since the beginning of COVID?
Asking.
Do you know?
They don't know. Of course they don't.
It's $13 trillion, okay? That's $40,000 for every single man, woman, and child in the entire country of the United States of America. Every single man, even the babies, all right? So if you're out there watching and you're not $40,000 richer now, somebody's got your $40,000, okay? Who? Who's got that money now? So the most amazing thing I've ever seen at the beginning of COVID, we all knew governments across the world were going to give these unbelievable, enormous amounts of money out. The UK number is just over £1 trillion, by the way. These enormous amounts of money being given out. Nobody asked the question, who's going to end up with that money? Nobody. This is $40,000 for every... Imagine if the government came and took $40,000 from everyone in the country. And gave it to somebody. Nobody did the analysis. I did the analysis.
Can you point, if you know your history, can you point to a period in UK history, for example, where massively punishing rich people by massively taxing them?
This is the other thing I want to say that Gary does so well. These guys on the right are fucking snowflakes. In my opinion, Gary's giving out facts and logic, and the guys on the right keep coming back to, why are you punishing them? Why are you being so mean to them? Why should we have to? It's like, it's really interesting to watch one guy, this lad from East London, giving out facts and figures on what happened, and people like, and Rubin does it through this, and Morgan's about to do it, punish. Why would you punish? And Gary's like, I'm not going to fucking punish them. I'm just saying this is what's happening. It was fascinating to watch this, to watch these guys become victims and almost go to, but why are you being so mean to millionaires? Really interesting.
Where massively punishing rich people by massily taxing them has actually benefited the country.
Listen,
because I can't really.
My dad was born in 57. He worked for the post office, Royal Mail, 35 years. Never once earned more than the average wage in the country. He was able to buy a house, support a family. My parents are retired now. They own their own property. They're financially secure. That's not possible now. He lived in an era where the top rate of tax was much, much, much higher. The 50s, the 60s, the 70s in the UK, in the US, the top rate of tax on large estates was significantly higher. And in that time period, it's not a coincidence, ordinary people could afford to buy houses. They could afford to... Listen, this is not normal, okay? Read your history, right? You read Charles Dickens? In this country we're talking right now, 150 years ago, ordinary men and women lived in desperate poverty, okay? That's going to happen again. That is what, it's not normal.
Hold on, but making the argument that 40 or 50 years ago the tax rates were higher and somehow that made things better. First off, times change. The giant middle bureaucratic state that Donald Trump is constantly fighting was
narrative. It's all the government's fault.
It's not nearly as big 50 years ago. So again, I'm talking about this from an American perspective. As we're uncovering this waste, the idea that, oh, only if we took 10% more or 20% more from this person or that person, I don't think makes sense. As it pertains to COVID, I would say, yes, COVID was a giant wealth transfer from the poor to the rich. I was against lockdowns. I was against putting people out of work. I was against virtually all of the regulations after 2 weeks to slow the spread. So again, that's got giant government programs creating the conditions that create all of the economic and social and cultural problems that we have. So the solution to that, I think, is exactly...
Yeah, you can see Gary just chomping at the bits to get in, eh?
What we have seen for the last month, which is let's deregulate, let's figure out where the fraud is, let's give people more of a chance. We can deregulate the banks so that they're willing to loan again, so that people can buy houses again. Let's stop printing money so interest rates go down and inflation goes down so that people can actually get loans, so that America loans right now are something like 6-7%. It's very hard to buy a house at that rate. When I bought my house, only a couple of years ago, it was around 2.9%. Well, then it's valuable because, okay, you're going to pay a little penalty and hopefully your house goes up over time. So just removing the government and the regulations and the waste, that to me is the answer, not just I need that guy's money and I really would like it.
Could I ask a question? You've accepted.
There we go. So number 2, all you could hear is that neoliberalism, and again, talking points. Next, we're going to talk about Gary speaks to Dave Rubin and he asks him if he can see a connection between the wealthy getting wealthier and the poor getting poorer. Do you want to say anything before we hit play, Chewy?
Traditionally, historically, that's been a really dangerous thing.
Expand.
When the poor get poorer and the rich get richer, the poor do notice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm on record here that if we don't do the choppy, they'll never stoppy. Okay. There's a tipping point in modern society, well, in any society of inequality.
At one stage in this conversation,
hasn't gone well for people.
Stage in this conversation, Gary gives a 6-word answer. I'm not going to spoil it, but the 6-word answer should be the left slogan when it comes to tax for the next 20 years. Here we go. Asking about is there a connection between the wealthy getting wealthier and the poor getting poorer?
Could I ask a question? You've accepted there that during COVID there was a massive transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, and all the statistics support that. After COVID, after lockdowns, after reopening, we know there's been a massive transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. We then saw a massive fall in living standards for the middle class and for the poor. Do you think those two things are connected?
From an American perspective, I would say those things are largely connected because they decided to print money relentlessly. That's what we did. We did the Inflation Reduction Act, which was actually an inflation increase act.
The average increase in US billionaires' wealth in the first year of COVID was more than 100%, doubling of wealth. What's the US GDP rate of growth? 3%, 4%? At what rate does a billionaire's wealth increase? These guys doubled in 1 year.
But wasn't that mainly? But Gary, isn't that a bit disingenuous? Because the reason their wealth increased so exponentially in that period was just because stock prices flew up, right?
I don't think it's just that.
Wasn't that how they accrued the extra wealth?
I've got a video explaining exactly this, all right? Listen, you lock down the economy, okay? Ordinary family, my parents. How much their expenses decreased.
But are you arguing that the billionaires locked down the economy? I mean,
No,
I knew.
Oh, victim, don't back on the billionaires, victim. He's not saying that, Dave Rubin, at all.
No, not all. I'm just trying to explain what happened, all right? You locked down the economy, okay? My parents, how much is their expenditure for? Basically nothing. Basically nothing, because their expenditure is entirely rent, mortgage, food, bills. Like, that's poor people's expenditure.
Right.
Whose expenditure falls during COVID?
The people who have, normally would go out and spend a lot of money.
People who have a lot of luxury
spending.
weren't spending. Non-essential
They were
spending,
accumulating more money.
So if you ban luxury spending and you replace it with, as you say, government printed money, what's going to happen? That printed money is going to go to people who work in the service sector. They're going to use it to pay their bills. It's going to go to the rich people who own the corporations, who own the houses, who own the debt, and they can't spend it. What you have is basically a massive cash injection from the government through the poor to the rich. Listen, we saw the biggest and fastest ever transfer of wealth and increase in inequality in the history of our nations, and it was immediately followed by an inflationary crisis and a collapsing cost of living. This is the clearest proof you will ever need. You don't need me, somebody who's made millions of pounds betting on this. The clearest proof you will ever need of the absolutely bloody obvious fact that if you massively increase inequality, you will decrease living standards for working people.
Well, it seems to me that the part we're agreeing on.
There you go. Chewy, anything more? More to come.
So why is it at this point of this discussion, at this point in history, do we all seem to fall for the same talking point that only the right-wing politicians know how the economy works, when all of the evidence over the last 150 years is they fucking don't? Rubin was talking about such absolute nonsense like deregulating banks. That's one of the things that led to the Great Depression. And the thing that got America out of the Great Depression was doing the thing that he was demonizing, printing fucking money. They put people to work doing big, expensive public works. Like, these guys don't get it. Economics at this level is sometimes counterintuitive. Governments need to spend money in bad times and cruise during good.
Yep.
Business
100%.
will always look after itself. The wealthy will always be insulated from all of this and will be able to look after themselves.
Yeah.
If you give $100 to a poor person, they spend it all.
Yeah.
They spend it all locally. They spend it all on essentials. You give the same money to a rich person, they go, that's very nice. I'll put it with the other ones.
Yeah.
And they'll sit on it. They don't stimulate the economy in the same way. Elon Musk buying another private jet doesn't stimulate your economy as much as paying for the poorest half of your population to go and buy groceries and pay their landlord's rent or pay off their mortgage. It's just like, why do we keep forgetting this? I'll tell you why. Because the people that fucking benefit from it benefit from us getting it wrong every single time.
Yeah. And we're about to move
the same pricks.
We're about to move into the part of the conversation where these guys go into victim mentality again. And Gary has to say, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying what is going on. And the formula that I just pointed out, wealth going into the working class, then up to the wealthy who then sit on it, means that when they can spend it, now the working class, the poor, are now competing with the wealthy who for those 2 or 3 years had this pile of cash just growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, and then being priced out of the market on things like their eggs if you're in America right now. Let's have a listen to the victim mentality of the right.
Yeah, I don't really see the correlation between that reality, which we can all agree to, and the fact that it's the billionaires' fault for getting richer.
Oh. Exactly.
When actually a lot of that wealth was just accrued from...
Listen, I'm not Mahatma Gandhi, I'm not Mother Teresa, I'm not a moral philosopher. I'm one of the best economists in the fucking world at this, okay? I'm here to tell you what's happening. If you massively increase inequality, these guys, they don't just sit on that $10 trillion. They don't just sit on it. They use that to buy assets. They buy the assets that ordinary American working families need. The reason why American families, their kids can't afford homes is because they're now competing with a billionaire class that is $10 trillion richer. $10 trillion, that's $40,000 for every American man, woman.
What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that even if we were to take that premise as true, so I'll go with you on the premise, the fault would not lie within the billionaire doing something that is right. Yeah. So if we're in agreement on that, I think that's positive.
But where does the poverty lie?
So then the issue really is, what would you want a competent government to do? And I think what you would want a competent government to do is make sure that there is as little waste as possible, that we're not spending money on trans comic books in Peru, which is literally what we're finding out right now, and we're going to perhaps audit the Fed and find
$13 trillion in debt, and they're worried about an $87,000 grant to an LGBT group. 13 trillion, 87,000.
Out where the trillions of dollars to Ukraine went and everything else. And if we have a proper accounting, the same way you run your household and anyone would run their business, then we could probably address some of these issues. But I'm glad to hear that we're not really blaming the billionaires who are just playing the game as the game is set up.
Yeah, what you want to change is the system.
Yeah, look, I'm not here to blame nobody. Listen, I'm a rich person. You're a rich person. I just met you today, but you've got a very nice suit. I see you're doing all right.
A new suit.
Listen, I'll tell you what a competent government would do. A competent government would stop.
Sorry, I just thought we'd pause and Mr. Luxon, I think this is a message for you. Okay, we with that now? Mr. Luxon, this is for you.
I'll tell you what a competent government would do. A competent government would stop this massive, massive increase of inequality from accelerating out of all control.
How would you do it?
So do you agree with Donald Trump's policies on that? Because by lowering taxes, by lowering regulation, by getting rid of inefficiency, I mean, I'm with you on the premise.
How rich is Elon Musk? How rich is Elon Musk?
He's worth trillions, I don't know.
Okay, let's say he's worth $300 billion. Okay, what is his passive income going to be on $300 billion?
I understand. So you want him to
$15
be
billion a year.
more.
$15 billion a year. Okay, what's $15 billion a year per week? We're talking about something like $300 million a week.
Well, what's your point?
These guys have no choice but to buy up the assets. These guys will buy up all of the assets. If you allow these people to be extraordinarily rich, they're not bad people. Well, in some cases they might be, but I don't know these guys, right? They will buy up all the assets. And ordinary people will own nothing.
So, they have no choice but to buy the assets, Chewy. They have no choice. They have got no place to go. They have to buy the assets. Working class, middle class, poor are competing with the people who are able to sit on piles of cash, because in general, you don't want to sit on piles of cash. They need to do something with it. You're competing in the housing market. That's what it would be in New Zealand, at least.
Mm-hmm. It's a new game, right? Like you can't just let your money just sit there in a savings account. How boring, how gauche. You know, I just say my life took a dramatic turn. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I have $2.8 billion in the bank account.
Oh, nice.
I know, yay for me, right?
Yay for you.
There would be signs. There would be signs that had happened. But eventually, where is your moral tipping point? When you can look at that money, look at all the problems in the world and go, man, someone should fix this. Not me, but someone. I always come back to that famous conversation that Elon had on Twitter of like, how much money would it cost to cure world hunger? And someone from the UN said, give me a week, I'll come up with a plan. And it was a bet, like, you come back, I'll do it. And they came back and they said $6 billion or something like that, and we cure world hunger.
Wow.
And Elon ghosted him. Like, it's those sort of things. These guys, like, they expect a certain level of deference, that the reason that they've got all of this money is somehow they're innately better, innately smarter at not just the one thing that they're potentially good at, but it flows out to everything. I've got a lot of money, so I'm good at everything. And in so many cases that everything turns to be government. I've got a lot of money, so I should run everything, even though they have no experience, and that business and government do not have anything in common. And we've seen this in history. When the oligarchs get control of everything, things go very badly. And I think what we see in America at the moment, and what we've seen in the UK, is the very, very wealthy people failing their way up into public office. We hold these people to too much deference. We should look at them like the morally corrupt people they are for hoarding that much money and not personally choosing to go, I've got everything I need. I am comfortable and set, and my family is comfortable and set for the rest of our natural lives. I need to offload as much of this money as I'm going to fund. Like, the country that I live in, I am so wealthy that food banks shouldn't exist. You show me a millionaire, a billionaire that is doing that, I will show you a good billionaire. But at the moment, we have dragons sitting on piles of gold, completely blind to the good that they could be doing. And none of them have stopped. Bezos hasn't stopped. Musk hasn't stopped. None of them have. They keep hoarding. And every time they help, it is a tiny fraction of a percentage of their wealth. And they go, look at me, aren't I a good boy?
Well, even that, the tiny fraction. So from Oxfam, according to an estimate shared by Oxfam, around 23 billion is needed to fight extreme hunger. To fight chronic hunger, another 14 billion is required. In May 2022, the World Bank announced a $30 billion plan to address world hunger. So $30 billion, Elon Musk is currently worth $384 billion. So he could fix world hunger and still be worth $350 billion. So that just goes to show what the numbers are. We are going to keep going though, because I want to get through some more of these, and we'll continue this conversation. I just wanted to play this bit for you as well, because this is this victim mentality. You know, why are you portraying Elon as a bad guy? And you'll notice at no point has Gary said anything disparaging about the wealthy. He's talked about the way to end the inequity in society, and because these guys find it uncomfortable, because it might mean them having to do something more or give up something more, they see it as an attack. And it's the ultimate snowflakes on the right.
Portray him as one of the bad guys, I think, is probably very unfair.
I ain't here to call. I ain't never met Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I ain't never met the guy. He could be a nice. Have you met him?
I met him once last year for a couple of
If he
hours.
wants to copy my book, I'll sign one for him. We can send it over, right? Look, listen. I'm not here to attack Elon Musk.
No, but you know my point.
I'm here to
He
protect.
can afford a copy.
I'm
He'll
here
buy
to
it.
protect my people's ability to feed and house their children, and they're losing that.
Right.
They're losing that. And listen,
But why is that Elon
we are
Musk's
not-
fault? Because he's
I ain't saying
employing
it's Elon
hundreds
Musk's
of
fault.
thousands of
This
people.
is because wealth inequality is rapidly
Classic
increasing, and
Piers.
wealth is being sucked out.
Yeah, do you see what I mean? It's like, but we're just rich. What can we do? What should we do?
I hear you, but why? But what can he do about it?
I don't.
Well, I just gave you an answer. 30 billion to solve world hunger is worth 384 billion. So he could still be worth 350 billion and solve world hunger. If he chose to, he could do that. Or he could also send out 125 tweets tomorrow, amplifying the worst voices in the world. 125 tweets, amplifying the worst voices in the world, solving world hunger, tweets, world hunger. He's going to go with tweets. He's going to go with tweets.
Elon, listen, I don't expect Elon Musk to do anything. I'm not here to talk to Elon Musk. I'm here to talk to the American public and to tell them I get paid millions of pounds a year to watch your class.
So what's the answer? Give me your answer. If you're now,
can only be taxed.
Let me make you the
Now, for people in the audio podcast that might have got lost in that, the answer to the question, what needs to be done, he said, it can only be tax. It can only be tax. That's the answer that one of the best traders in the world, who has read the system right for the past 15 years, is giving. It can only be tax.
With any of the things that Donald Trump's doing as per the economy or anything that we've seen in the last month,
I don't think that they're going to work. I don't think because I am somebody who has made millions of pounds betting that growing inequality will reduce living standards, and he's cutting taxes on the rich. Listen, let me ask you a question, right? You've already accepted if we massively increase inequality, that can decrease living standards. If we massively decrease tax on the rich, people who make passive income of $200 million a year, do you think that will affect living standards of the middle class?
I don't know.
If they increase their ownership of wealth, if they increase their consumption of goods and services, where does it fucking come from?
Say again, Trey?
I believe Rubin there was telling the truth.
That he doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
Because he doesn't get asked questions. He pontificates in front of a camera and never gets challenged like this person who has done the mahi, who has done the work and continues to do it every day.
Their ownership of wealth, if they increase their consumption of goods and services, where does it fucking come from? Listen, we have sat here in the last 5 years. We've watched the biggest ever increase in millionaire and billionaire wealth in the history of this planet, immediately followed by a collapse in living standards of the middle class, a complete collapse in the ability of ordinary people to own assets, and nobody's drawing the connection.
Gary, let me ask you a hard question. Can you point to a country in the last century where socialism has worked?
Fuck off!
You just notice that word has never been used. This is what the right does a lot, actually. What the right will do is they will complain about how the left always talks about X, Y, and Z like this. Socialism hasn't come up. Gary's never mentioned socialism. I expect he's probably a capitalist if he's worked in that world and still talks about being worth millions of dollars. But the right will go, oh, the left are always wanting socialism. That hasn't been said once tonight. But listen to his answer, Chewy. I think you'll like it.
In the last century where socialism has worked.
I will point to a country where taxing the rich at a fair rate led to good living standards for working people, United States, 1955.
There you go. That's exactly the point you made before. United States, 1955. I've got several other clips to go, but they're only like 30 seconds. And is there anything you want to talk to now, or shall I just roll? Because I'd like to get to these because it's worth seeing.
He's absolutely right. Tax is the answer. If it wasn't the answer, then the rich wouldn't be so aggressively anti it.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't pour so much money into parties whose whole thing is cutting tax for the rich, that somehow cutting tax magically stimulates the trickle-down economics that we've been talking about since the 80s. That has never worked. That is the answer to that question. Show me where socialism has worked. Show me where trickle-down economics has worked.
Yeah, 100%. I'm completely with you on that. The other thing that I like about Gary, he gives us his nutshell argument now, and then we're going to play. I'm going to go straight into another clip where he actually basically says, I'm not a good guy. So the other thing is he's not setting himself up to be this good guy. These two guys try this gotcha with him about, so how much money do you give away? Oh, you're telling us to give our money away? How much do you give away personally? That comes up. We don't really play much of that because it's all bullshit.
Yep.
That's all bullshit, though. We don't go there because he's not actually telling these guys to give their money away. What he's saying is the system needs to be changed. That's why he said, I don't know about Elon Musk. I'm not telling him to do anything. He's trying to tell people what's going to happen. He's trying to change the system, is my reading of it. But the first part here, it's only 30 seconds. In a nutshell, what has Gary been talking about?
Is that somehow if we can just take from these people, it's not to say that the system is perfect.
I'm not trying to take from the rich. I'm not trying to take from the rich.
But you just said you wanted to get us back to 1950s rates of tax.
I am trying to stop the redistribution. I am trying to stop the redistribution that is happening in front of our eyes. The American middle class, the British middle class is dying. Their wealth is being sucked away and is being owned by an international super rich elite who pay no tax, while the people watching this show pay 40%, 50%, while billionaires pay nothing.
Let me ask.
There you go. There's the first one. Second one I'm going to go roll straight into, Chewy, is talking about, he basically, they kind of start to attack him and he goes, I'm not a good person. Like, I'm just who I am and I'm not sitting. And I think you heard it in that answer. He's not telling anyone to do anything. He's not telling the wealthy to give their stuff away. He's wanting to change the system to see the transfer of wealth be more fair, my words.
Look, I've told you before, I'm not Mahatma Gandhi. I never pretended to be a good person. I was the best trader in the fucking world, one of the biggest banks in the world, and I made that money by betting the American middle class would be destroyed.
I get it.
I ain't here to be Mahatma Gandhi. I ain't Nelson Mandela like you, boss. I'm here to tell the American public what's happening.
But do you think you practice what you're preaching?
What I preach is to raise taxes and reduce the growing inequality. That's what I preach. Listen, I ain't here telling people, I didn't tell you to give your money away. I didn't tell you to give your money away.
You want the power, but you are, because you want the power of the state, which has the guns.
And this is this American right-wing thing, that the government's too big, they're going to take all our money.
To say to Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg, we're going to take your money, we're just going to pick a number and decide how much to take. Do you give more than 1% of your money to charity?
I want the state.
You can voluntarily
ordinary
do
people
it.
from the rich.
But
if
do
they
you
don't,
do?
See, this is the world that Dave Rubin lives in. He now thinks he's got a gotcha. He's now thinks he can embarrass Gary because he's going to apply. He doesn't practice what he preaches, but what he's preaching is about the systems. He said several times, I'm not telling anyone what to do. He's talking about the system. That's what he's preaching. But these talking heads like Dave Rubin, who don't have an original thought in their head, who have a mix of probably Milton Friedman followed by some other horrific people telling them how trickle-down economics works, that's all they've got. It's like, you know that scene in Good Will Hunting where they're in the bar and Will tells the philosophy student or whatever he is all the things that are on the pages of the things he's going to think next year. This is what these guys do. They have the lineup of things they've been told or they've read they should think, and there's nothing original. And Gary's just sitting there going, this is what's going to happen.
Do any of that yourself?
Listen, I'm not here to tell anybody to give their money away.
Right,
I'm here to tell people how to protect their class.
101. I mean, this is what the left
All right, listen, I'm going to go home and I'm going to bet on the collapse of the American middle class, and it's going to happen. And I'm here telling them it's going to happen.
Okay,
and I'm here telling them how to stop it.
Why don't you do that
I
and
ain't here
donate
pretending to be a
1%
good
of your
person.
salary?
I never said I was a good person. Read the book, you can see. But I'm a good fucking economist and I'm going to be right. And you've made your prediction that living standards will increase in the next 3 years. And I've made my prediction that they won't. And we will see in 3 years who's right. And I will tell you right now, I haven't been wrong many times in the past. Listen, you're from my country, okay? You know people that look like me and sound like me don't get a chance to make millions of pounds betting on the economy, okay? There's a reason that I'm doing this, because I'm fucking good at it, okay? I don't need to be here. I could be on the beach in the Philippines.
I know lots of traders who come from working class backgrounds.
Who? Name one.
Yeah, no, you
don't. I know lots in the city.
Listen, I worked in Canary Wharf. I'm from East London.
I worked in Canary Wharf.
A guy came up to me and he said, that's an interesting accent. Where are you from? I fucking worked in East London. Listen, Piers.
What he's saying, people who don't know, is his accent is the accent of the region he worked in, but no one from that region works here because it's all traders and wealthy people. That's why the person in the area of East London where he works said, I don't recognise your accent.
I've got a lot of respect for you, okay? You're an older man. Nowadays...
Whoa! That was brutal! That was brutal!
The City of London does not contain working class people. I've been there, Piers. I've been there. I was there 10 years ago.
Well, there are no working class people in the City of London.
And there's the other tactic from the right. I can prove it wrong with one person. No, what he's saying is proportionally in East London, where this place was, where he was working, you don't hear my accent. It doesn't mean is there another single one or not.
Come on.
I worked in Canary Wharf for 4 years. One kid come through once. His name was Tariq. I remember. The only working class kid I ever saw come through when I was there. One, Piers, in 4 years. In Canary Wharf, which is in East London.
Okay, so I'm still trying to wrestle with.
So I'm going to play another bit for you. I'm going to just do it straight away, Chew, because this is actually, where he uses those 6 words, because he finally gets asked, what would you do? And so now we've spoken to the media who are watching. Now we'll speak to the Labour Party who are watching. Write these 6 words down, right? Because I think the Greens are probably already there. Labour, write these 6 words down and run with them for the next 2 years and then the next 20 years after that.
But what is your answer? I mean, if you had the chance now to run the Western world economically, give me the blueprint for how we stop going down what you think is an apocalyptic path.
Tax work less, tax wealth more.
Tax work less, tax wealth more. Tax work less, tax wealth more. He's got 60 seconds and then we'll talk about that.
Simple as that. You can't have ordinary working people paying 40-50% while billionaires pay 5%.
But ordinary working people don't, but you mean the middle class, though? That's not working class. Working class
people pay 30, 40, 50% once you include everything. Once you include their VAT, once you include their income taxes,
GST,
they do. They do. Once you include their health taxes,
What would
it's
you be for a flat tax? Pick whatever the number is, 12% on
No, because it won't work. A flat tax is still going to work. Listen.
So what would you like to see?
I know you're an American, okay? Listen, look at the history of my country, okay? For hundreds and hundreds of years, a small, tiny, super wealthy elite lived the fucking dream while ordinary people lived lives of desperate poverty, okay? That is what's going to happen to your country. And that is what's going to happen to my country if you do not protect the working class from the rich.
But that's exactly what we're doing right now. That's what Donald Trump did.
We've made our bets.
That's what.
I love that as well. We made our bets. So it's like he's not even an ideologue. He's just basically saying, if I'm wrong, we'll see. If you're wrong, we'll see. Tax work less, tax wealth more. The 6 words that the left in New Zealand need to get onto, and the left around the world need to as well. Tax work less, tax wealth more. I think there's a t-shirt coming out with that. Chewy, any thoughts? I've got a couple more to play, but they're both 30 seconds.
Look, America is an extreme example, but this is a problem that is faced throughout the Western world. Like that question that we heard earlier of show me a place where socialism has worked. Show me a benefit of high taxation. The US rebuilt the entirety of Europe at the same time as having these very high standards of living in the middle class. They rebuilt the Marshall Plan rebuilt Europe, bombed flat, destroyed all of that, stopped the spread of communism, because that was how they did it. That was how they stopped communism. And they did this by massively taxing their wealthy. The wealthy still made money. The Rockefellers were still around. But they didn't have an ever-increasing list of ultra-wealthy. They had the same problem in England. We have the same problem here. And every time we talk about taxation, these wealthy people that have the ability and the means to hide their money, to dodge their obligations, to pay an average tax rate far, far below what you or I pay, and go, I deserve this because I pay overall quite a lot of money in tax, not by a percentage, but by an amount. So they are still not paying their fair share. And they're able to do that and still enjoy their very high standards of living. The rest of us have to struggle. The rest of us have to debate whether Nelson gets a hospital or Dunedin gets one, but certainly not both of you. People are stacking up wealth and hiding it from their government. I've seen the argument in the chat from a couple of people, like, do you trust the government to administer all of this money? Because all of this is obviously all of this wealth,
more than Elon Musk,
corruption and waste. And Elon Musk is getting paid $8 million a week for this Doge thing. It's fucking ridiculous. Do I trust the government to not be wasteful? Do I trust the government to spend money only on the things that I consider worthwhile? No. But do you know what the best answer to that is? We have elections. And isn't this one thing that the wealthy talk about, is that democracy is really important? It fucking is. It all goes hand in hand. If we don't like what the government is doing with our tax dollars, we vote them out. And the problem is we've got stuck in this loop that these rich people in blue suits say, I worked in a business or a boardroom and I know how money works. And every time we go, yep, sounds good to me, have a go, they show us that they're wrong and they don't know what they're talking about. But they and their mates never, ever pay the price for those poor decisions. They get their knighthood, they end up on a board of a bank, and every now and then they get asked about their opinion on the economy, and they'll say the same broken shit every time. We keep forgetting this lesson and we keep having to relearn it. We need to break the wheel. Now, this guy, this argument of like, you're wealthy, so why don't you give away all your money? That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I want the government to take more of my money. Now, that's as honest as you can get. Like relying on rich people to somehow be super altruistic and give away all of their extra money. Again, where has socialism ever worked? Where has a society been propped up by the ultra wealthy out of the goodness of their heart? Don't worry, I'll wait.
Yeah. Where has capitalism worked either? I mean, if anyone answers America, you'll have to go, well, actually, 2008, all those capitalist companies that got bailed out in a way of socialism, they privatized their profits and socialized their losses. So it's the same thing. Two more clips, though, Joey. A little bit from Gary about where did this passion come from to get this message out there?
Good question, because it didn't really come in a moment. You know, I mean, you spoke in the book about me sort of having a breakdown. You know, I didn't grow up. I'm not from a political. I don't consider myself a politician. Like for me,
no, I get it.
What I see, you know, I made that money, and everybody around me was like, "Well done. Here's $2 million. You know, do it again." Like, and I got sick. But
what made you sick? Do you think? Was it the pace of work, or
it was understanding that my country's going to fall apart, Piers. It's going to happen, Piers. Listen. I've been right for 14 years on this, okay? It's going to happen. And you've made your predictions, you know. And I fucking hope I'm wrong, but I haven't been wrong before.
What do you make of the whole crypto thing?
I think it's a fucking pyramid scheme.
Do you?
Yeah, listen,
I don't understand it.
I could launch Gazcoin today and my followers would send me £500,000 and I could fuck off, you know, and that's basically how it works, you know. I think it's a very efficient way to get a lot of money out of the young, hopeful, ambitious young men of this world into the pockets of the worst San Francisco dickheads you've ever met.
Last clip. One more clip before we rate. And it's this is like 13 seconds. This is what we're going to end on. Gary asks, who is doing the taking? $40,000 in America for every man, woman, and child. Who is doing the taking?
Nothing
Dave,
right.
Who's doing the taking? Who's doing the taking? Which group in our society is getting richer and which group is getting poorer?
So again,
who is doing the taking?
So I accept that the rich are getting richer.
I'm just here to protect my people.
Poorer.
I'm just here to protect my people.
I think
that's it. We don't need to get Dave Rubin's redonkulous voice and redonkulous ideas coming out that he hasn't had an original thought in his brain ever and hasn't done the work and has never really been in the situation of making those sorts of decisions. He's a media commentator. And that's pretty much all he's ever done. So if I have to throw in with one camp, it's going to be in with Gary because he's been there, done that. He's got the keys to the kingdom and now he's opening the door for us to see in. That's all my clips, people. That's all my clips for tonight.
One rant and we can all go home.
All right.
I always like when we look at the lists of where citizens are happiest, and it's always those Northern European, Scandinavian countries with high taxation.
Yep.
You look at the happiness of their citizens. Then you look at their schools. Their teachers are well paid. Their kids well educated and fed. Their hospitals are glorious. And I think that is the thing. If you are paying a lot of money, but you're getting good returns for that. The machinery of government is working. The streets are clean. People that need help are getting help. They're not on the streets bothering you. Crime is low because employment is high and wages are good. There are no waiting lists for hospitals because they're well staffed. You know, why is it that you compare the wages of teachers, policemen, nurses, junior doctors, all of that sort of thing. Those wages are static. Somehow they've got to go fucking begging for pay rises, and they drag on for 3 years and that sort of thing. But our politicians, their wages go up. It used to be that I believe that politicians' wages used to be tied to teachers' wages. That it had to be it go up and down at the same rate. Let's bring that back. That would change some things. We've talked about a huge range of topics on BHN, and it all comes back to the same thing. We want a better society. We've got to look after our kids better. We've got to make sure that they're educated, healthy, and fed.
Holy shit.
That is they don't, like we've talked about education standards, and apparently it's new curriculums, but it's not more teachers. It's not retaining them. It's not keeping that knowledge. It's not keeping class sizes down. You know, we want to go to hospitals that are not falling down and be staffed with an appropriate level of nurses that we have trained and that we retain, because their work is valuable. It's important to our society, and we reflect that in their pay. All of these things come back to tax. That is the mechanism that we have.
Just so you know, because I had a look what you're doing, the average teacher salary in Sweden is between 30,000 and 40,000 krona a month, which is like 5,000 New Zealand dollars to 6,500 New Zealand dollars a month. Starting salary for a primary school teacher in New Zealand is in the 40s or something. Starting salary in Sweden is more like 65, 70,000 New Zealand dollars. That's I'm just as a, I mean, yep, cost of living, that kind of stuff could be different. Sure, fine, but there you go. There's the response to that.
Let's use me, your friendly podcasting host, as a yardstick. My real human daytime job is selling phones. I make $70,000 a year on average selling phones. It's something that doesn't keep society ticking. It's not something that improves generational outcomes or that sort of thing. You should totally buy a new iPhone or a new Samsung from me, though. I tell you what, I'm good at it. But why am I valued more than a junior nurse or a junior doctor or a teacher?
Yeah.
What is my input to society compared to that? Like, that's not an argument to pay me less and them more. Their job is more valuable. They've had to study to do it. It's important. But we have to dicker that teachers get paid too much, apparently. That we can't have enough teachers for a classroom. There are two big problems that Western society in general needs to solve. Taxation and housing. We have all fucked it up since the 80s, and there is enough evidence to point to it on any form of graph you want and go, this shit is fucked, and the people that are telling us that it's actually okay are the dragons sitting on hoarded, accumulated wealth stolen from their workers. Yeah. It's stolen from you. The Mowbrays selling cheap plastic Chinese manufactured shit to children that just ends up in landfills for 7,000 years. Or Bezos, at the most extreme end of late stage capitalism, is an absolute failure. He's building the castle, the final monument to that. Nobody has the stones to actually do anything apart from rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic at the moment.
Yeah. Look, let's wrap up. We're wrapping up now. I'm impressed to see so many people have stuck with us for close to 2 hours. It was a long show, I know, but I just had the sense that was an important conversation to see. If you are a patron, I've put the clip on Patreon, but of course you can just go to YouTube as well and find it there as well. You'll find it, and these will come out as clips over the next few days. A bunch of super chats in there, so we'd like to get to these because we believe in capitalism. Is that right, Chewie? Something like that? I don't know, I can't remember.
Yeah. No, ignore my words. We'll shill ourselves for anything now.
The Falconer for $5. Trickle down economics equals trickle down into politicians' pockets, not workers' pay. I know it's always the obvious thing. Trickle up would work so much better, but no one ever talks about that. Chances of a Port Waikato getting a second by-election, asked Rajan, 0% is the answer to that. Peter says for the worldwide fund for foo-foos. I think you might have been blowing yours at that moment. The Falconer for $5. 6% mortgages. What a dream. When I bought my house in the late 80s, it was 20% plus, but people could still buy food and pay power bills. Yeah, interesting. You hear some people who maybe call boomers, like I remember the conversation 10 years ago about like parents of friends talking about, 18%, but if you work in the cost of the actual price of the house, it was still far cheaper to purchase a house even at 18% than it was sort of 10, 15 years ago at 6 or 7%. Mr. Arvid, I want to know your signs. Kiwi Bird, I got brain damage watching Piers Morgan. Thanks. Sorry, you'll sleep well, Kiwi Bird. And Howie V, thank you for the super chat. It says state violence maintains a lid as we negotiate how greedy the greediest can be. Police protect corporations. And that's us for tonight. Let me remind you, people, the 6 words that we learned tonight. I feel like the electric company. Remember the electric company when you were a kid? The electric company. They used to have the letter of the week and the number of the week. Well, the sentence of the week is tax work less, tax wealth more. And yes, that will definitely be coming to you at a time not too far in the distant future as product in our store, bhnshop.nz. I'm about to push play, Joey, unless there's anything else you want to say?
No, I've well and truly expended my bile sack.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work at what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a sub and a higher in mind. All heavily, either this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by what Chewy and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's big hairy news.
Chewy, Gemini makes so much sense. LOL. Of course, I'm a Gemini too, so I don't know if that makes more sense.
It's all coming together now.
There you go. All right, team. Thanks for being with us tonight. We're back in tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition, a live one of Big Hairy News. Anything to wrap up with, Chewy?
There are not very many promises I can make in this world, but I will make this one. We will continue to make Chunga really angry, just with our utter incompetence in economics and how the world really works. That's my promise to you. We're going to keep doing it.
All right, team. Catch you from tomorrow night. Be safe. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam. Eat the rich.